Now, can we look at the matters that have arisen as a result of the various announcements by persons within the NDC that they are going to contest for the flag bearership? Of course, you know by now that the number, we can't count at this point yet. We have Guzitano, who just is the latest to have shown interest and written to declare that he's going to contest. Guzitano, you know him. Also, we have had President John Mahama do same. We have had Spio Gabra, we have had Sylvester Mensah, and a host of others would be looking at. Mr. Bagwin has also done so, and Kwesi Botwe, we are told, may also do so soon. He's angry that there is an attempt to give him a smaller position in the NDC, and he's not happy about it at all. All right, so a couple of comments have come out and have been made about that. Once again, let's hear them, and then I'll get to my guests in the studio to look at the matters arising as far as the NDC flag bearership is concerned. I'm asking, will President Mahama survive it? Because it does appear he's going to face such a tough contest.
I was captivated. I had to watch and listen to him announcing his bid. It showed a lot of seriousness and all that. I think this is a new strategy that he adopted to announce. And I said, hey, this man is not a president. And see the way he's the medium, he chose to announce his candidate or his decision to contest. It is important for him to be advised that yes, popularity he is, but there are other aspirants who are also working behind the scenes very hard to also court some popularity for themselves. So politics is not about all for what you do for the cameras. It's also about what you do behind the scenes and door to door, and that also endear yourself to people who really matter in deciding who becomes a flag bearership. And so you must be mindful of that. Even though I'm also aware some are not doing so well in declaring or making people know that they also want to contest. Some are engaging in utterances that, in my view, are politically suicidal and would harm their fortunes. But generally, there are others who are also serious, who are also trying to court popularity for themselves.
Right. So the voice you heard there belongs to JoyNews, Professor JoyNews of the University of Ghana Political Science Department, and has a couple of issues about, the people who are showing up and some of the commentary that they are making. Once again, my guests in the studio, Kofi Abochi, Dr. Eric Odro-Osai, Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, and Professor Justice Baole. Okay, so these are the people that you typically don't get to hear them talk about politics. So let's see how they fare on the matters of NDC politics. Yes. So, Prof.
Yes, please.
Let's start with you. The NDC's flag bearer contest. How do you see it so far, and the matters that are coming up, including whether or not, I hear some people say they are going to sue even the former president because they don't think he's qualified to contest again as president, and so on and so forth.
Well, let me leave the legal issues for the lawyers. Incidentally, the three other people are lawyers. I'm the only non-lawyer, and very soon I'll probably looking to become Zamuchi's student.
Okay.
Because that was my childhood profession, actually, dream profession. So, but politics is about people having rights to decide whether or not they want to put themselves up. I think politics, as we have now, the democracy we run is one that gives every person who is sane and who is 18 at the presidency level, higher age, that people should have the right to put themselves up. And for me, it is extremely important that people are given the platforms to put themselves up, because when people know that they can put themselves up and they will be evaluated based on who they are, we are likely to get a society that has people living good lives, because they know that in future they would put themselves up and that people would evaluate them based on the lives that they have lived in the past. So on that basis, I think that anybody who is a member of the NDC and who qualifies by the Constitution of Ghana and the rules of NDC should be allowed to put themselves up. I am happy that the contest is heating up, and I like to see a lot of people come up. Why? Because that will help to energize the party grassroots and to get them prepared for battle for 2020. So do I have any issues with any of the candidates? I don't think so. I rather, just like my colleague Professor Gyampo said, would want to say that whilst they go about doing the campaigning, they should be mindful of some of the utterances that they make, because it will hurt them later and all of that. Is the former president, does he have, I think he should be allowed to contest. The lawyers will say whether it's right or not, but at least from a layman's understanding, I think that he can contest. Would he win? It looks to me that he would win the contest. From the I am also a grassroots person. I go to the villages a lot, and I interact with a lot of people who are at the grassroots, and it looks to me that he has some very good support in the grassroots of the party across the country. It can be very tough, but I think he would win, and he will win in a massive, very, very massive way. But whether or not he would proceed to win the national election is something that Ghanaians would have to decide. Of course, it will be based on the performance of the current government, and people would usually immediately play back. If he comes back as the candidate for NDC, people will play back what he did and what he didn't do, and then they will compare to what the current government is doing and what they didn't do, and people will make decisions based on that. And Ghanaians have rights to choose. I have only one vote. I can only talk about my vote. And so I think that it's okay to allow the space to continue. It is healthy for our democracy that people have the right to contest. I just hope that, I mean, it doesn't become acrimonious that will hurt the entire party after because everybody will need everybody once the internal contest is over. But otherwise, I think people should allow people who
all the 11 or 12 individuals so far that have indicated that they want to contest, they are in for this job for the NDC. Who do you think will give John Mahama, good run for his money?
To be very honest, I haven't done a careful analysis, but if you hear in the news, at least on social media, you hear three other contenders that you would say these are serious contenders. Bagmi has been doing a lot of talking. Professor Alabi has been doing a lot of talking. And then Spio has been doing a lot of talking. The others are perhaps, I don't want to write off anybody. They can call it a surprise, but the others don't appear to be making a lot of news. Of course, the election is won in the grassroots, so maybe they are doing a lot of grassroots work. But otherwise, if the results is declared, and I don't see these three plus the former president on top, I really will be surprised.
Okay.
But as I said, I think that it will be a very tough contest because the former president still has a lot of loyal people around him, and power draws people, influence draws people. The fact that he was in,
he had almost all the MPs,
exactly, so signing to support. So of course, people would pitch their support based on what they think they can get or not get. So what they can get first and foremost is that we want to come back to power,
right?
And if they consider a candidate to be the most sellable candidate, they would pitch that, because if you remember, they would rather be in power and not have any position than be in opposition and be strong people. So people will pitch their camps where they think the candidate is the most sellable candidate. And in this case, it looks to me that the former president looks very, very strong contender in this game, and that is why all of the people will come along with him. I don't even know some of the names, because honestly I haven't taken time to do that. But these are the four that I think would give the president, the three that will give the president a run for his money.
Well, I just want to preface my comments with my reading of the last election. I think that the 10% gap, which was a big gap over, I mean, if you take the Rawlings period for a long time, most of the elections were very close. The 10% gap was a surprise, I think, to many. But it's because I think Ghanaians basically got to a point where they made a statement about the rejection of the entire political class and the way in which they operate, and entrusted their hopes in a president. So this was Akufo-Addo, who was seen as somebody that seen it all, was seen to be not corrupt and so on. And therefore, if you needed somebody that was going to be anti-establishment or anti-status quo, that this was going to be the president. So it's not just a vote for the MPP as such, but somebody who was going to change things. So I think that's very important. So if you put that contest there, it would depend on how the MPP perform, particularly how Akufo-Addo performs. So when you bring the former president, and this is an interesting scenario because the memories are fresh for Mahama. All of the concerns that were raised about corruption and incompetence and not having control and all of that. So on one hand, most political parties will go for familiarity because it's easier to sell the candidate. People know what they are getting. But this is also a situation where familiarity can breed contempt. So there's a lot for Mahama to do in terms of convincing Ghanaians that you are not going to get the same Mahama. But already you can see that the actors who were at play at the end of 2016 are still the same ones out there advocating for Mahama. And as Dr. Baole was talking about, these are organized through structures and MPs and so on, and they mobilize their groups, brokers and all of those things. And if the same people, the same actors that were there at 2016 are the ones backing Mahama, for me, I see it presents a problem. But let's put it all together. There are 11 or so that it sort of draws me back to 2007 when the MPP went to Legon, the 17 candidate issue that they had.
And NDC thought it may never get closer to this point.
Exactly, right?
Okay, so those who are in the contest, let me just go over them. Sylvester Mensah, who is a former CEO of the National Health Insurance Authority. Dr. Ekosfio Gabra, former Trade and Industry Minister. Former Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, UPSA, that's Professor Joshua Alabi. Keiko South MP, Kweku Ricketts-Hagan. And then Guzitano, who has been with Rawlings for a long time until he felt that the Swedru declaration didn't help him. He broke away and then formed his own party, and subsequently he says he was convinced to come back to the party. You have Abam Bagbing, second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Stephen Atubiga, member of the NDC communication team, who suffered a contempt in the Supreme Court some time ago. Eli Klim Agbamava, who is a lawyer. Then you have David Doche Kwame Kuwada, who is a banker, and oil and gas consultant Nuruddin Idrisu, and of course John Mahama.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, it's similar to that contest when it happened.
And we are expecting that Dr. Kwesi, Professor Kwesi will put his own in.
When it happened to the MPP, most of them were in government, and that added to the backlash because they went off spending all amounts of money, and people thought that they were completely, opulent in their display. And that affected the MPP in 2008.
Actually, I see Dunkitia called them thieves.
Yes. So, for me, that presents a problem. So, already, if you get the narrative that is going on, it draws back to the process that Professor Boche went through after the loss of the NDC, it's not resolved who is to blame for the defeat. And that's going to play out because in terms of presenting your candidate, you want to position that person as the person that didn't contribute to the defeat. So when the dust settles, the question is, what type of NDC would you have in terms of the people who are going to now contest the MPP? Are they people who are going to rally behind whoever, or there will be the Alan Chebatin, Akufo-Addo faction emerging, and how would that play out going up? So it raises a lot of questions, but it doesn't answer the question for the potential voters going into 2020, because it goes back to what I said. That vote was a vote, a stand against the political class and what they have been doing. How is that going to play out when there's a rematch come 2020? Where would they, depending on how the MPP performs and what kind of NDC they will get, if they are given the same candidates come 2020, how would they respond? Would they think, oh, well, nothing has changed and therefore there's apathy across board, and therefore those who are able to mobilize their voters are the ones that basically are going to win? Okay. So I feel that for me, we are going to, in 2020, we might get to a place where we have not been before since the 1992 election, where people might say, we don't have a choice. There's no choice between the two parties because of all of the dynamics that I played out. You know, depending on how the MPP perform, they actually go to an election where there's really not a choice. And how would they then respond?
Interesting. So, who do you think will give John Mahama, a contest?
It's because I also don't know, when I look at the demographic of Ghana, and it's very youthful, and I look at the players, most of them have been around a long time, but I don't know how they have appealed to the younger people. The most was, I think Mahama, because a lot of it, he's been around most recently. Sylvester Mensah and all of that. But how are young people going to relate to Backben or Gusitano? In terms of whatever the internal NDC politics is. So it's very difficult to put my finger on it. How some of these other players are going to be able to appeal. Professor Kosiboche, how are they going to appeal to the youth of NDC, who are very basically Mahama Mills. And if I look at even the MPs who are going to mobilize, these are very young MPs who came under Mahama Mills. So there's kind of very limiting in terms for some of the other players. But as you say, maybe at the grassroots level they've made connections, but it's difficult to tell.
All right, you just a minute. You spoke about what he may carry as a baggage,
yes,
which is very recent.
That's right.
But in his announcement, he does suggest that, look, I'm a changed man.
Well,
will that count?
And it's the credit. So how
he's saying that I have been there and I've been out. I know what it takes to do the things right. Sure. So give me the opportunity once again.
Well, that's the thing. Would that be credible? Because people will say, okay, you were vice president before, you were this before, and so it's not that this is new. Why would we trust you the second time? So I think, and I've seen that some of the approaches is to say, forgive me for what I didn't do well. It's a very difficult. As I said, I haven't seen a former president in this role before, so it'd be interesting to see how Ghanaians.
Okay, so yes, so Doc, you look at whatever permutations there are, and also the other arguments going into the national election itself, beyond the NDC's own election, where the NDC is beginning to put out a message that says that John Mahama will be able to boast of so much that he did in his time, when it comes to infrastructure. And that within the 4 years that Akufo-Addo has been in power, he will not be able to match it. And how will that also work for him? Well, that is, if he wins the NDC's primary.
It's interesting.
If you think he will win.
Yes, it's interesting. Because at this stage, what I expect the NDC to do is to think medium to short term.
Okay.
In fact, short term to medium and then long term. I expect the NDC to put up a very good political strategy that can help them to ultimately achieve their aim of capturing power. To be able to do that, I think we have a number of candidates. Former President Mahama has done his bit. In fact, my personal view is that in public service, you live when the applause is loudest. He served the nation as an assembly member. He served the nation as an MP. He has served as a vice president before. He served as a president, as a minister, as a former president. So if you tell Ghanaians that you owe God and country a duty to bring NDC back, you cannot only do that when you are the flag bearer, you can do that in other capacities. I think it is about time. Strategy-wise, what Ghanaians may be looking out for in 2020 may be maybe the Mahama record and another value addition. So who can bring that value addition to help the NDC recapture power? So if you ask me, I would say that if he can step down and allow the other candidates to go through the mill, join forces with former President Rawlings to rebuild the party, support them to capture power. He can come in and win the primaries, but as to whether he will win the national election is another matter. At this stage, they need a candidate who would be appealing to the floating voters and the elites, those in the middle row, because NDC can boast of about 30% or even 35% of the voters. NPP can have same, but you need a candidate who will be appealing to those who are not either NDC or NPP. And they have seen what President Mahama has done. So I think that my humble appeal to him is that he should just step down. You leave public service when the, when the applause is loudest, you've done your bit, allow others to continue.
Okay. So if he's not there, who will be your preference? Eko, Spielgabra, Guzitano, Sylvester Mensah, Bagbing, Kwesiboche, who is yet to now put in? Who is it?
I tell you, if you look at the northern-southern middle balance, and you look at the dynamics, and you look at one who can attract the floating voters, Alabi stands tall.
Joshua
Alabi, for two reasons. Alabi has a certain constituency. Alabi has been the vice chancellor for UPSA. Alabi started as head of department for marketing. In fact, you can get students who are even MPP or others who may want to vote.
Are you supporting one of your own?
No, I'm not supporting one of my own. I'm not supporting one of my own. Okay. But then strategy-wise, and you see, he's one person who combines effectively, who is easily acceptable by those up north. He schooled up north. He attended Tamale Secondary School. And when you look at Alabi's history, he's a compromising candidate. And if you do the analysis, it tells you that it is about time NDC gives an opportunity to somebody from the south, specifically the Gans, to lead them. I'm not playing a tribal card.
There's a suspicion that former President Rawlings would rather like Guzitano.
It is interesting. At this stage, I would advise former President Rawlings to back out or to back off, because if he comes in to present a candidate, it will affect the NDC.
He has not done that. He says they should vote for a competent, person.
So this is where the elders of the party would have to put up their political strategy. You don't need a candidate to win the primaries. You need a candidate who will win the primaries and go all out to win the national elections. So you don't allow former presidents to determine the choice. Go all out and look at all these permutations and put up a candidate who can match the NPP. I can tell you, if President Mahama wins and he is to face current President Akufo-Addo in 2020, what is he going to campaign on? He's going to campaign on his legacy. Ghanaians have seen his legacy, and I say, oh, we've seen it. And I can tell you that once they have beaten him, they will beat him again. So why should NDC risk that? And if they present him as a candidate and the NPP beats them, it gives the NDC a tall order. They are now to look for another candidate, market the candidate for 2024. And that one, too, their chances are 40-60. So in my view, they should look at all of this and come up with a candidate who will win the primaries and win the national election.
But they will tell you that when it does happen that they don't win, and you go to 2024,
that's right,
then you're going to have 2 new faces for both parties. So that is going to be a fair contest. So they will prefer it that way instead.
Well, the option is DS.
Okay. All right. Okay. I know you don't like this, but you are here.
But I'm here.
You're here. So
I'll say something.
So yes.
Bobby likes it.
Yeah.
I'll say what I have to say. Well, interesting. First of all, again, I'll put this in context. The context is 2020. And I think Dr. Asante and Prof. Baoli mentioned that. The 2020 election will be won, in my opinion, on 4 key factors. The first, the middle class. The middle class has grown exponentially within the last 8 to 10 years. Exponentially, by factors. The people who used to be in the villages, who normally voted for the NDC, a good number of them are now in the cities. Some have become middle class. The middle class cannot be ignored. Number 2, new voters. Some statistics suggest that the new voters coming in will be as many as 3 million. I think moderate statistics are saying they'll be in the region of 1 million to 1.5 million. That is a constituency that cannot be ignored. They are significantly going to shape the dynamics of 2020. The third one are the moderates. I think those of us sitting here probably qualify as moderates. People who don't qualify as middle class. Moderates, the people who often look at things from a variety of perspectives and who decide on the basis of factors, the realities on the ground. Then, number 4 is the voter question. Now, I call it the voter question because in the case of the NDC, it is votes lost. In the case of the MPP, it is not votes gained, but it is votes neutralized, which is positive. Therefore, if you put these 4 factors together, whatever decision that is going to be taken, as far as the NDC's primaries are concerned, must reflect the vicissitudes of these in 2020. Otherwise, it becomes an exercise in-house, which gets nowhere. I do not think...
Okay, so set up, if you underestimated Kofi Abuchi's prowess in the area of political analysis.
I do not think that the NDC want to engage in the latter suggestion, i.e. an exercise in-house which gets nowhere. Therefore, and I know you draw me in the direction of asking me to predict who I think is the most likely candidate who would win among others, I would not take that invitation. Because that, I think, may end up to be an unfair advertisement for some candidates. And I would not want to do that. But I would just want to say what may look like the candidate who should win. And this is the point I'll make. That the candidates who must win, in order to attract these people. Now, these people, I said, these factors are going to shape the 2020 election. There's one I did not mention because that represents a constant. In the mathematical sense, they call that a key, right? It represents a constant, and that is the base. For the basis of the parties can turn into rocks. They'll vote for them. So I have not mentioned them because they are not a variable. For them, they are a constant. Whether it rains or it shines, they will vote for their political parties. So in terms of 2020, the variables which may dictate whom they vote for significantly will impinge on one key factor, and in my opinion here, it has to do with the personality gravitas of the candidate. Voters who are affected by the elements I've mentioned look at the key and fundamental question of who the candidate is. I have said this in places, and I think occasionally it got me in trouble, that the NDC and the MPP are hardly distinguishable as political parties. The two parties have merged, or they have converged, in the areas of ideology that used to differentiate them. In the 90s, the NDC stood for social democracy. The MPP stood for free market economy, capitalism. The World Bank and the IMF conditionality and policies and other external factors have compelled these two parties to either become socially oriented in the case of the MPP or to become free market economy in the case of the NDC. So the two parties have actually become increasingly the same thing, one and the same thing. Therefore, what distinguishes the two parties often has to do with the personality leading the parties. The voters who go to the polls and make their decisions on the basis of the dynamics of the time look at the person leading the two political parties. And that's why I will still suggest that in terms of who wins at the primaries of the NDC, the key and fundamental question should be what is the personality of the person involved? But it's not just personality in terms of the, the beauty physicals among others, but personality in terms of what the message is. And I think Kojo or Doc mentioned the question of the message. In the case of former President Mahama, his past is both an advantage and a disadvantage. It is an advantage to the extent that he's marketable. It's very easy. If you put him there, it's very easy to market him to the rural folks and other people, for example, who has to be reached. The disadvantage lies in the fact that if he lost by 10 percentage points, then he needs to do a lot to bridge that. Because, and I agree 100% when Dr. Asante mentioned the fact that that represents a statement by the voters that something was fundamentally wrong, and therefore it represented a certain degree of rejection. That can be rectified, but in order to have that rectified, the former President Mahama must have a new message. And again, that is something that can be crafted. So I will not go as far as to suggest that former President Mahama has the advantage, or in the case of Doc, that Professor Alabi has the advantage in this context. I think the key and the most fundamental thing is the personality gravitas of the leader is important. Now, I will not suggest the question of withdrawal because I do not think it will happen. Yeah. And I have to be respectfully honest about this. I do not think former President Mahama will withdraw. And I have to tell you why. Even strategically speaking, if I were him, I will not withdraw. And the reason I will not withdraw is because former President Mahama left office with a deficit he would want to rectify. He finds it so bad, and anybody will find it so bad, that in his own opinion, in light of all that he thought or he thinks he's done, given his legacy, among others, for him to have lost power, not by the traditional 2%, 1.5%, or some point something percent, but actually to lose by close to a 10 percentage points, it is a deficit he would not want to be remembered for. That is a political reality and misfortune for him, which one can understand why he would want to rectify that. So I think that if you ask me, strategically speaking, of all the candidates put together, by reason of his service, which you actually itemized, the fact that he was from the assemblyman all the way to a president, now to a former president, and possibly to another president. What it means is that the former president, in reality, if you put all the candidates together, he has one gravitas on one side and all of them together, Mr. on the other side. But within the context of the in-house activity in the party, that may not necessarily shape the dynamics. Within that context, you may have other forces that may be at play, which may not be in the open. But I'm just thinking that, and I just made a suggestion, that the party, in going through this exercise, would want to do that reality check, because the danger of mismanaging the process, of having too many candidates standing for the votes, is that you may have fragmentation. The fragmentation may become so deep that at the end of the day, the cracks cannot be mended. And I think that is where the leadership of the party would have to sit down and ask themselves, what really is the essence of this activity? If the essence is for us to capture power, then there must be ground rules that must be stated and itemized, and contestants must be told to keep within the rules, with the possibility of disqualification at the pain of disqualification for breach, so that the cracks are not left unamendable, which may actually have an impact on the elections. And I think the NPP suffered that some time ago, when people said all kinds of things against each other. Now the elections are over.
They're seeking to do that, and Mr. Mahama has said that his campaign will not do any such thing that will hurt the individuals who are contesting.
Exactly so. Because, and that represents, I think, a mature statement. So he has made a clear statement. Would the others do that? Because the thing about some of these promises is that the Americans will call it the race to the bottom. People say things against you, and then you want to show that you can go deeper.
Right.
And then the others want to show you they can go deeper. And then there's no bottom line. You keep going all the way until you drag everyone down. So I think he's made a fantastic promise. It would be good if all the parties or all the candidates sign up to a certain declaration that, look, this is the minimum behavior. Because in the end, once the internal contest is over, that is not the destination. It is part of the journey. So if you destroy the journey, there will be no destination. And the destination in this case is actually to win the election 2020. So it's incumbent on the party, at least to learn from the experiences of the party on the other side. That party suffered, the NPP suffered, with all kinds of things that people said in the course of the race. And later they will have to undo that. And the NDC used it against them in many cases. So I think moving forward, I will not want to say anything that will give any particular candidate an advantage, but I would just want to say that in terms of his own background and history, he obviously comes with that advantage as far as the race is concerned. But 12 people, or is it 11? 11 people you mentioned.
Yeah, about 12 now.
11 and a half. I think one may shortly come up.
Professor Bali wants to come in now. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll hear you. And when we return, Dr. Drosai, Dr. Clementa Park has a message for you. And also, there's a message to Mr. Abuchi. I'll be right back. Right, welcome back. Thank you very much for keeping your dials with us here on Joy 99.7 FM and on television. This is your Joy News channel, and we are also on myjoyonline.com, and you can actually practically watch and listen to us everywhere in the world. My guest, Kofi Abochi, Eriko Drosai, Kojo Pumpuni Asante, and Justice Bawole. Now, before he comes in, the message from Clementa Park to you. The other one for Abochi, I've discovered is only a greeting. Now, Clementa Park says that, where is that message? Okay, I'll look for it again. It seems to be escaping, but I'll look for it again. There are a couple of messages I can read for all of us, share with all of us, and then I'll go get that message later. Now, here are just a couple of your messages, those that you have sent in so far. It does appear that too many of you still want to talk about Cathedral. Can we move on, please? Kodia says that perhaps the church or sponsors should consider absorbing the cost of the resettlement to bring some closure. In the alternative, or you meant to say an alternative to the congestion question, the Arts Center Enclave may be considered for an uplift to include this must-do project. Okay, thank you, Lawyer Kodia. Now, Eja Adam says the National Cathedral is sinking in the middle, which is the exact opposite of such edifice. Christian places of worship take the form of a praying hands pointing upwards. The architect may be saying something. They do all the time. I hope I got the picture right. Okay. Manav Wakilo Adam says, if issues of corruption would be the basis of choice of the next leadership for 2020, I strongly believe that Nana Akufo-Addo will sink because of dirty scandals involving huge sums of money. Okay. Anthony Zoma Baliji says that Lawyer Abochi's analysis is deep. Those with ears should consume it. Consume with your ears. Okay. Frimpong Manso says that the NDC lost the 2020 elections against an opponent who gave phantom promises, including transforming Ghana in 18 months, retrieving and paying all locked up DKM and other microfinance monies to customers, reduce fuel prices, a stronger CD, and many others. Today, we see the opposite of all of these promises, and that has re-energized the comeback of JM and the NDC. JM is the man for the transformation of Ghana. Okay, so it can really get really interesting, doesn't it? And Dr. Park says that, please tell Dr. Osei that JM will contest. The final decision makers will be the rank and file of the NDC and ultimately the people of Ghana. He forgets that the MPP Nana Addo is also building a record. It will be on JM's record of 4 years and Nana Addo's record of 4 years. Okay, so thanks for those messages. Let me hear you quickly.
Yes.
And any one of you who has any little thing to add to the discussion on the NDC, and then we can proceed to the bank matters. We have been discussing that for almost a month now, but it does appear it will not disappear.
So I wanted to say that in the interest of our growing our democracy, the NDC should of course, whoever wins would win. But if it was possible to influence who wins, they should look at the figures of our national presidential elections. Since 1992, the trend has been that any president that won first time, second time he lost votes. And that has consistently happened until now. Now, if you look at that trend and you see that the former president won an election at a very close range in the year that he won. I think that was 2012, yes. So the 2012 election, if you saw the votes that the former president got, and if you look at the trend in terms of percentage of votes lost first time, second time, you will see that it meant that the president was going to go for a very tight race. In other words, if he lost even a percentage vote, he would have lost the election. So if you look at that trend, and of course this is the first time we are going to see a president who lost an election contest again. But if you take the statistics and say that every president that won election on the second time lost some votes, and you look at the fact that he lost the other election, if he's coming back, we don't have that record yet, but if he's coming back and he's going to lose further votes, then it means that it's going to be a very tight race, even if he won the presidential, the party flagbearership. So, and that is why the NDC would have to look at it. So, unless, as the communication by Dr. Park's analysis, the current president is also building a record. But if you look at the votes that the current president won, and if he was losing even 3% votes, percentage in points in the vote, he will still be able to make 50%, a little bit more. And if the trend about losing votes is held constant, then it means that if President Mahama wins the primaries and he goes for a national election, he may, if all things were to go the way, he may actually be scoring less than the votes that he scored the first time. And that is why, as a strategy for the NDC, you want to look at a candidate that may be able to live beyond the first election that they go. That is the 2020 elections. And say that if that candidate doesn't win, how would we be able to go further into 2026? And 2026 would mean that Nana-Addo would be off the scene, and then there will be new people in there. And if NDC had marketed a candidate already, that candidate will have an edge over the new MPP candidate that will come. And if those were analysis that NDC could help to do, it may help them in terms of their strategy going forward. And I thought that this is instructive for them to take a look at.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, let's get into the banking area where we know a lot has happened over the period now. Okay, so I'm being prompted. Let me read this. Eja Adam says that Mr. John Dramani Mahama remains the NDC's best and surest hope, but we will remind the Ghanaian electorate that even in an era where he seek re-election, he bluntly said, and I quote, okay, how sure are we that even if, God forbid, though, he becomes president again in 2020, he would listen to what the masses will be telling him, knowing very well he'll be going for the subsequent election.
He will not be going
he will not.
Yeah.
He's a former president and he should adhere to the position, period. That position, period. Okay, thank you for that message.